The arena went dead silent. Then, boom! Seth Rollins snapped in a way nobody saw coming. Cameras kept rolling as he stormed out of the ring, eyes burning with rage, and fans realized this wasn't part of the show. For weeks, rumors swirled that Rollins had been holding back something dark, something personal. But tonight, live on national television, he finally let it all out, attacking someone fans least expected. WWE security rushed in, commentary went silent, and even Triple H looked completely stunned backstage. What made Seth Rollins lose control like that? Who pushed him past the edge? Stay tuned, because what happened next might change WWE forever. It had been a brutal main event, a championship match that Seth Rollins lost, but only after kicking out of 3 finishers. He was the workhorse, the man who held Monday Night Raw together, and he had failed. But this time, something was different. Usually, after a loss, the visionary would either cackle in madness or seethe with a theatrical fury. Tonight there was nothing. He didn't move. He just lay on the mat, staring at the arena lights as his opponent celebrated and walked up the ramp. The show was supposed to be going to commercial. The director in the truck was likely shouting at the referee to get Seth to his feet, to play to the crowd. But Seth remained perfectly still. The camera did an uncomfortable, tight zoom on his face. There were no tears. There was no signature smirk. There was only a hollow, terrifying emptiness. The crowd, usually buzzing with the post-match high, felt the shift. The air turned cold. A few fans in the front row, visible on camera, stopped cheering and just pointed. Seth slowly sat up, his eyes not looking at the fans, not at the ramp, but locking onto something specific at ringside. That's when commentary finally went silent. Corey Graves, who had been analyzing the loss with his usual sharp critical tone, suddenly stopped mid-sentence. The target of Seth's stare was him. Rollins slid under the bottom rope, his movements fluid but devoid of any showmanship. This wasn't the freakin' Rollins strut. This was a man on a singular, dark path. He bypassed the steel steps. He bypassed the security guards who were positioned, confused, not sure if this was part of the angle. Seth walked directly to the announce table. Michael Cole, sensing the danger, physically pushed his chair back, his hands up. But Seth didn't look at him. He looked right at Graves. He didn't shout. He didn't posture. He simply vaulted the table, scattering monitors and scripts. The feed captured it for 3 horrifying seconds. Seth grabbing Corey Graves by the lapels of his suit jacket, dragging him over the desk as Graves's headset was ripped from his head. Then the screen went black, a hard cut, no fade, just black. The arena, however, saw it all. Security, finally realizing this was real, swarmed the table, creating a pile of bodies. The crowd was utterly, completely silent. Backstage, in the chaotic nerve center known as the gorilla position, Triple H ripped his headset off. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't furious. Witnesses later said he just looked pale, almost sick. He stared at the blank monitor, then at the frantic producers who were scrambling to fill the dead air. The live feed was gone, replaced by an emergency WWE Monday Night Raw graphic and bumper music. "Get him back here." "Now," was all he said, his voice quiet but carrying more weight than any shout. The problem was, getting him back was proving impossible. Security was separating Seth from Graves, but Seth wasn't fighting them. He had simply let go. He wasn't resisting arrest. He was completely placid, as if the act of grabbing Graves had drained every ounce of energy and adrenaline from his body. He was escorted, or rather guided, through the curtain, his arms held by 2 massive guards. He walked past Triple H without making eye contact. He just stared straight ahead, dripping with sweat, his eyes still hollow. He was guided directly past the locker room and into a private office where a door was shut. The show still had 10 minutes of airtime. The locker room, usually a boisterous place of post-match adrenaline, sweaty gear, and friendly banter, was as quiet as the arena. Every wrestler, from the newest rookie to the most seasoned veteran, was frozen, staring at the television monitors. They had seen backstage fights before. They had seen arguments, disagreements, and ego clashes. But they had never seen the company's top star, a man known for his professionalism and his dedication to the character, completely abandon the script and assault a broadcast colleague on live television. There was no cheering. There was no judgment. There was only a cold, shared fear. A fear that the pressure they all felt, the pressure to perform, to travel, to be on 24/7, had finally found its breaking point. They all knew Seth. They knew the burden he carried. And as he was walked past their open door, several superstars turned away. They couldn't bear to see the look on his face, because they recognized a small, dark piece of it in themselves. The illusion of control, the separation between the performer and the person, had just been proven to be terrifyingly thin. The next morning, the internet was broken. It wasn't just wrestling news. Mainstream sports outlets, entertainment blogs, and morning talk shows were all leading with the Rollins Snap. WWE was forced to issue a statement, and it was cold, corporate, and brief. Seth Rollins has been indefinitely suspended following an unprofessional incident that occurred during last night's live broadcast. WWE is investigating the matter and takes the safety of its performers and employees seriously. That one word, unprofessional, confirmed everything. This was not a story. This was not an angle. Social media was a war zone. Fan cam footage, shot from different angles, was dissected frame by frame. You could see the moment Corey Graves' face registered not just surprise, but a flash of genuine fear. You could see Michael Cole desperately trying to signal to the back. Fire Rollins was trending, right next to "We Stand with Seth." Fans were divided between those appalled by the violence and those who felt a deep, uncomfortable empathy for a man who clearly, visibly, had reached his limit. But why? That was the billion-dollar question. This wasn't a random explosion. The title of this video mentions revenge. Seth Rollins didn't just attack a random person, he attacked a specific one. The insider reports began to trickle out, sourced from anonymous backstage employees who were there. They claimed that this had been building for weeks. Graves, in his heel commentator role, had allegedly been getting more and same, more personal with his on-air criticisms of Rollins. But the final straw, according to the leaks, was something that happened during the match, caught on a hot mic near the announce table. While Seth was down, Graves allegedly muttered something that wasn't meant for broadcast. It wasn't about Seth's in-ring work. It was about his family, a quiet, cutting remark about his wife, Becky Lynch, and the pressures of their life. Suddenly, Seth's action wasn't just a loss of control, it was a defense. He hadn't snapped as the visionary. He had snapped as a husband and a father. The revenge wasn't for a wrestling loss, it was for a personal line that had been crossed. To understand the snap, you have to understand the pressure. Seth Rollins wasn't just a superstar, he was the superstar. The architect, the kingslayer, the visionary. He was the man who had been the first NXT champion, the man who broke up the Shield, the man who cashed in at WrestleMania. More recently, he was the one who showed up every single week in the most bizarre and colorful suits imaginable and had 5-star matches even when the storylines weren't perfect. He was the standard. But that standard comes at a cost. Imagine having to be that on, that loud, that eccentric every single night while battling injuries, jet lag, and the immense pressure of a global brand resting on your shoulders. The cackle, the dancing, the suits. It had become armor, but all armor eventually cracks. For weeks, fans had noticed the cackle seemed a little more forced, the eyes a little more tired. The incident wasn't the creation of a problem. It was the violent public exposure of a problem that had been festering in the dark for months. The man behind the mask was suffocating. The indefinite suspension was real. Seth was sent home. Corey Graves was also given time off to recover. The first and only meeting Seth had was with Triple H 2 days later, in a quiet office in Stamford, Connecticut. This wasn't the Game talking to his employee. This was Paul Levesque talking to Colby Lopez. Paul, the man who had mentored Seth, who saw him as one of the cornerstones of the future he was building. The disappointment was palpable. The first rule of the business, the real business, had been broken. You protect the illusion. You protect your colleagues. You never put your hands on someone outside the script, especially not on live TV. The reports from that meeting say Seth didn't argue. He didn't make excuses. He just sat there in simple street clothes, looking exhausted. He explained quietly that he didn't even remember making the decision to jump the table. He just remembered the silence, the comment he overheard, and then the chaos. It was an admission not of malice, but of a complete and total emotional burnout. Weeks turned into a month, then 2. WWE programming moved on, as it always does. Another commentator was brought in to sit beside Michael Cole. Other superstars stepped up to fill the main event. But the energy was gone. The chaotic, unpredictable, vibrant center of the show was missing. Seth Rollins' social media, once a constant stream of visionary bravado and training clips, was dark. Not a single post, not a single story. Becky Lynch's social media also went quiet, focusing only on her own work. The silence was more profound than any promo. The fans missed him. The anger from the incident had faded, replaced by a genuine concern. Was he okay? Was he fired? Had he quietly retired, broken by the industry he helped build? Corey Graves eventually returned to commentary, looking subdued. He never addressed the incident, and the other commentators were clearly instructed to never, ever mention Seth's name. It was as if the architect of the last decade had simply been erased from history. It was the go-home show before Survivor Series, in a sold-out arena in Chicago. Midway through the second hour, during a meaningless tag team match, the director made a strange choice. The camera panned over the roaring crowd and just stopped. It held on a section. Section 112, row 8, seat 5. At first, the audience at home was confused. Then, the fans in that section realized who they were sitting next to. A man in a simple, unmarked black hoodie, hood down, was sitting among them. He wasn't cheering. He wasn't booing. He was just watching. It was Seth Rollins. He hadn't come through the curtain. He hadn't jumped the barricade. He had bought a ticket. The arena erupted, section by section, a wave of sound that drowned out the match. Seth slowly looked up, not at the ring, but directly into the camera lens. He didn't smile. He didn't cackle. He just looked calm. And that's when everyone understood the twist. The attack wasn't his downfall. It was his escape. The revenge he got wasn't on Corey Graves. It was on the visionary, the character that had tried to consume him. He had to burn his own creation to the ground to find the man again.